Good morning. What a beautiful morning to be here. You guys can hear me okay at the back? Thumbs up from James. Thumbs up over in the back corner over there. Perfect. So good morning. Welcome to our mayoral discussion on housing affordability. My name is Dan Weiner, and I'm the Executive Officer for the Canadian Home Builders Association, Central Okanagan, and your begrudging moderator for today. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional, ancestral, and ceded territory of the Okanagan Syilx people. I'd like to thank our sponsors for making this event possible. I'd like to thank our media partner, Castanet, for being a live streaming option for this, and thanks everyone tuning in at home or online at work early in the morning, as well as our technology sponsor, TELUS. As a nonprofit, this event wouldn't be possible without the support of our community partners. To that end, I want to highlight our title sponsor for today, the Association of Interior Realtors. I'd like to invite to the stage, who's already behind me, the President of the Association of Interior Realtors, Lindy Cruikshank. For you and everything.
Oh, geez. You see two of me at once. My goodness. Well, good morning. I am Lindy Cruikshank, and I am the president of the Association of Interior Realtors. Thank you all for being here this morning, and thank you to the Canadian Home Builders Association, Central Okanagan, for partnering with us on this important event. The Association of Interior Realtors represents over 2,600 professional realtors from across the interior province. 1,022 of those residing right here in the beautiful city of Penticton. In 2021, the Association of Interior, Kelowna. It's early, and you all know now where I live. That one took me a minute. Okay. Back to it. So in 2021, the Association of Interior Realtors facilitated more than 25,000 residential and commercial real estate transactions at a market value of more than $15.6 billion. Residential transactions in the region contributed to $330 million in provincial property transfer tax. Revenues to the provincial government, and created spin-off economic activity of $1.5 billion while supporting 10,500 full-time jobs. Realtors are proud of the work they do and their contribution to the local economy. Our goal as an association is to bring excellence to real estate through leadership, education, technology, and advocacy. Our members are passionate about the work that we do and bettering the communities that they live and work in. And we want to be part of the solution to fix our housing crisis. The Association of Interior Realtors and our 1,022 Kelowna members look forward to contributing with a mayor and council that shares our vision of making the dream of home ownership a reality to anyone who wishes to call this beautiful community their home. Housing is a very extensive and complex issue with multiple facets that need to be addressed. This morning, the Professional Builders and Realtors Associations have come together with questions focused on development and housing. Again, thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoy this informative forum.
Lindy's a rock star who's been all over the interior supporting all of these campaigns, so thank you. We got a timer that popped up out of nowhere there. So, I want to thank all of you for being here, as the topic of housing affordability is one that impacts us all. Our association serves over 300 builders, renovators, designers, suppliers, trades, and professional services in our community. And all in, the residential construction community is the second largest economic contributor to our local economy, contributing $1.9 billion in Kelowna alone. But today's conversation isn't just about the cost of construction. It's also about the impact on the local workforce, the climate, and our economy. The CHBACO believes that Canadians should be able to afford a home to live in, and that home ownership not only represents a major life milestone, but an investment in their future. Buying a home in Kelowna is expensive. In 2016, the average home cost around $475,000. Today, that figure is it was over $1 million. It's now just below the modest price of $1 million. Not only are material and labor costs rising, but taxes and fees put in place by all three levels of government and timelines for approvals at the municipal level also drive the cost of housing up. Before we start today's program, I'd like to invite Neil Moody, CEO, and Carmina Toop, Director of Policy and Government Relations of the Canadian Home Builders, British Columbia, to talk about our provincial association and the recently published municipal housing and benchmarking study. Please welcome Neil and Carmina.
Thanks, Dan. And thanks, Darren Witt, for inviting us to be up here today. And of course, Cassidy is our president of CHBA BC. So we've got a great crew behind us. So I'm pleased to be here with Carmina as well. Carmina Toop comes from Build GTA, where she worked prior to joining CHBA BC. 2 years ago this month, she'll be celebrating her anniversary. She's been doing great work, hitting the road running, and she hasn't stopped since, so she's great. And she'll be speaking about a municipal report, so I'll be fairly brief. Just give you a brief overview of what CHBA does. For those of you that don't know what we do, we've got 8 local associations throughout BC. We have 2,200 members through the local associations. We've grown about 7% this past year, each year growing about 5%. Our largest, we're the largest sources of employment in the province, as Dan had just mentioned. The residential construction industry represents over 200,000 jobs, so it's a significant contributor to the province and the economic condition and health of the province. Our core activities, we're focused on advocacy and government relations, energy programs, so EnerGuide, technical and building innovation. We support our local associations. Of course, we run the Georgie Awards as well. Everything we do, we try and advocate, educate, innovate, and elevate in everything we do. That's for staff, stakeholders, and of course, members. Our advocacy program, lots of issues that we're always working on. We've got a very strong government relations committee. One of the longest standing issues, of course, is the amount of time it takes to get approvals done and permitting. Both at the municipal and provincial levels, a lot of work has to be done. We constantly meet with the provincial government. We've been involved in all the DAPR discussions. We're starting to see perhaps a little bit of movement with the provincial government. There will be a new leader in the provincial government coming up. We've heard as of yesterday, it may even happen sooner than everyone thinks, possibly as early as next week, depending on what happens with the NDP government. But we work very closely with all our HBAs as well to find out what the issues are and the important issues. And a lot of headwinds, of course, ahead. There's high inflation that everyone's grappling with, the high cost of construction, supply shortages, labor shortages, and the labor constraints continues to keep coming up. So you're going to have a chance this Saturday, if you haven't voted already, to choose your new municipal leaders. And part of that preparation, we put together this municipal report that is a benchmarking report, study that looks at 13 different municipalities, and I'm going to hand it over now to Carmina to speak to the report. And we'll be here if you have any questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thanks, Neil. So in CHBA BC's advocacy approach, we try to approach our advocacy in a evidence-based, solutions-oriented way. We always look at the government to see what changes they're introducing helps our builders build the homes that we need for today and tomorrow. And with 71,000 people moving to the province every year, we need to keep building homes for our new neighbors. So this year, we asked Altus Group to undertake a comprehensive study and research on understanding the housing supply shortages in the province, the extent of those shortages and how we're not meeting current needs, and what are the costs implicated with those misses. We also asked them to select 13 different municipalities across the province and benchmark the approval timelines for residential development permits, because development applications really play a key role in encouraging the delivery of supply. And we've had long-standing conversations of what those timelines are, and we wanted to put some numbers to that. So that's what this report looks at. We released that study last week, and the findings in it are quite staggering. Of course, we are not meeting our supply needs, but we're also not meeting the type of supply that the province and our growing communities are looking for. And it's creating what we are calling suppressed housing. And these are housing households like families and young adults that want to create their own households but don't have options and affordability out there to create that. And it's costing the province billions of dollars. I think it's calculated to be $196 billion if we don't create the households that we're looking for. And there is currently a suppressed household of 145,000 if we don't change the current housing conditions. And like I mentioned, development processes play a key role in encouraging more supply. And of the 13 municipalities selected, Kelowna is part of that study. And what we found is that on average, across 650 applications that were reviewed, it takes 13 to 14 months for a rezoning or development permit and over 20 months for a subdivision application. Those are numbers that are averages, and we're quite conservative with that. And I'm sure many builders here have experienced longer timelines. And so we are calling on our municipal council members that are going to take their new seats soon, as well as our provincial leaders, to address that and really implement the DAPR report to streamline those processes. And we are also asking the province to require municipalities to standardize and regularly report on the approval timelines and processes, because we need to know how we're performing to understand whether or not we are meeting the needs. And if we're not performing, we should be able to act quickly, and we need that information available for us. So that was a very key finding of this study, and which I do have copies of if those in the room want to take a look at it. So really, the study is intended to be a resource as you start to engage in your discussions with your new council members, and for the industry to understand what the market is looking for. And we look forward to hearing the remarks of all the candidates today, and thanks for having us.
Thank you, Neil and Carmina. So before we begin and call up our candidates, let's go through a few housekeeping items. So to start our conversation, each candidate will have 2 minutes for opening remarks. We have a timer here for them so that they know what's going on. We have 9 questions covering a variety of topics associated with housing. To the front of me, there is a quickly implemented clear box that I will pull names at random to determine who is answering each question. So each candidate will have 3 questions, and from there we'll open it up for 4 minutes for general discussion. If it remains civil, we'll keep it like that, but we can switch over to 2 minutes, 2 minutes to 2 minutes if we need to police these 3. Towards the end of this event, we will also have a pointed question for each of the candidates that were submitted by members of the CHBA-CO. So guys, this isn't me, but we'll see where it goes. So in between, we are running a Slido poll. You guys have a postcard that is at each of your tables, a couple of them, I believe. So if there's time at the end, we will allow for questions that are submitted. You can also vote for the questions that are already listed on there. There's about 10 to 15 currently. So if there's any questions that are of particular interest to you, you can either A, submit them, or B, vote for the topics that you want to hear. Finally, I want to thank the candidates today. It is a lot of work to get on the campaign trail. It takes not only the 30, 45 days of shaking hands and kissing babies, but months of planning, getting nerdy about policy, and, for example, spending an entire Thanksgiving weekend researching the topics of housing, theoretically. So we're going to draw some names at random and call up our candidates. I want you to give everyone a warm round of applause as they come up here. Our first candidate sitting here is Colin Basran. Our second candidate for the morning, Tom Dias. And I guess I don't need to draw the third one. Our third candidate today, David Habib. I feel like the draws remained relatively consistent across all of the debates, eh? Just by chance. Oh, I'm sorry. All right, well, we'll allow for opening remarks, and we will start with David Habib.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming so early in the morning. I'm sure everybody had other things they could be doing, but I'm so impressed that people are really trying to become informed and get the information they can from all of the candidates to be able to make an informed decision. As I worked around this community over the last 4 to 6 weeks, I've learned a lot, and it's been the biggest educational thing I could have ever hoped for in my life. It's been warm, welcoming, it's been amazing, and the thing I found most interesting is that we, all of us, have had the ability to inspire people to learn more, to want to know more about politics in our community. The most important thing I want to take and hand off as I go forward is that we need to get involved, that this is probably the biggest opportunity we have as a community to make a decision on where we go. This has far-reaching ramifications that we don't think about as we grow up in our community because we get so busy trying to survive. We get so busy trying to keep a roof over our heads and pay our way that we lose sight of the fact that we actually have the opportunity to step up and have somebody in office that can communicate and do the things that we feel we need to get done. There are so many issues here in our community that need to be changed and worked on, but they need to be done quickly. We can't wait 4, 6, 8 years to get things done. And it seems to me that that's what's happened in the past. It's taking too long. We need to put our feet down and start running and get ourselves to the finish line quicker, harder, and faster than we ever have before, because it's clear that if we don't move quickly, we're getting further behind day by day. Thank you.
Up next, we have Colin Basran.
Thank you and good morning, and I'd like to recognize that we're gathered today on the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Syilx Okanagan people. Thanks to the CHBA team for organizing this morning's event to discuss housing, a topic that is top of mind for our residents and has an impact on so many aspects of our community. This includes the many people in Kelowna who make a living and feed their families by building the homes we so desperately need. That's why housing availability and affordability has been a top priority and will continue to be moving forward. We are seeing record levels of investment in Kelowna by the private sector to build market housing both for rent and purchase, and by the provincial government on shelters, supportive housing, and complex care spaces. But these investments and resulting positive social and economic benefits aren't happening by accident. It's happening because we have forward-thinking plans in place to guide that growth and are helping us build a progressive, inclusive, and sustainable city. It's also happening because of strong and consistent leadership by City Council. We need investment to get housing built in Kelowna. Those investments will only be made in communities with a clear vision and a consistent approach to development applications. That's why now more than ever we need stable and stability in decision-making and leadership at City Hall. This strong leadership is the reason why the City of Kelowna has one of the most efficient development approval processes in the province. It's also why we are not only having a seat at the table, but are leading the conversations when the provincial government wants to make changes to housing and social policy. These are issues being faced by all municipalities, large and small, and Kelowna is leading the way. Although we are seeing a record number of housing units built, there is room for improvement to ensure the right supply is available for those who need it. I look forward to continuing the collaborative relationship the City of Kelowna has had with builders and developers in our community so that we remain the best place in Canada to call home. Thank you.
Mr. Dias, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for taking time out of your schedules to be here with the three of us this morning. I believe we all know Kelowna is an incredibly beautiful place to live, and I feel lucky to be on stage at this particular point in time asking to be your next mayor. We've grown a lot over the last 8 years, but with that growth has come some challenges. As you know, Kelowna is #1 nationally with respect to crime. We have the most traffic that we've ever seen. We have the most homelessness that we've ever seen. Our taxes are the highest out of the 10 major cities within British Columbia. And affordable housing is out of reach for the majority of our residents. And one of the biggest issues that I've heard over the last number of months as I've communicated with many residents is the lack of communication. They feel that their concerns are just not being heard. It is extremely, extremely important as we grow to make certain that the community is involved in that growth. And we need to start addressing these critical issues. But we can't do that if we don't recognize that there's a problem in certain areas within our community. We can't do it if we keep saying that it's another level of government's situation to deal with. Kelowna is my home. I have been here since 1995. I have raised my 3 children here. I have actively been involved within this community in many organizations, and I still and currently own an insurance operation that I have owned for over 37 years. Succession planning will allow me to transfer that business to my son as I become your next mayor. And it's my decades of commitment to those organizations that has allowed me the knowledge to be a strong mayor for this community. I thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. All right, so with that, let's get into our first question and see how this whole thing goes. So we'll get the question first, and then we'll draw the name. So the question that we'll be discussing, and these are all long ones, oh boy. So Kelowna was found to be amongst the top in experiencing significant population change between 2016 and 2021. Housing supply is an issue in many interior communities, including in Kelowna. The Altus Group Housing Study, commissioned by CHBA BC, along with the Development Approvals Process Review and the Canada BC Expert Panel on the Future of Housing Supply and Affordability, have made a number of recommendations to improve housing supply. If elected, how would you commit to increasing housing supply? And we have 2 minutes for Colin Bazran.
So as a housing leader in the province, the City of Kelowna was asked to provide input into both the Development Approvals Process Review and the Expert Panel on the Future of Housing Supply. And that's because in the last 5 years, we've issued over 13,000 building permits for residential units in Kelowna. Just 3,100, over 3,100 alone last year. So we need to continue to make sure that the developments are approved in a timely manner so that they're built as quickly as possible, because we know that the longer it takes, the more it costs as developers and home builders for you, which are then passed on to the consumer. So a couple of things that we've done is we have a housing needs assessment that helps inform our healthy housing strategy, which calls for a diverse mix of housing to be built in our community. We've had great success with incentives, particularly for rental housing, which we need to continue to build upon. Rental housing grants help create thousands of purpose-built rentals in our community, over 700 built last year, 1,400 currently under construction now, 1,800 more in the development application approval process. Our infill challenge provides incentives for missing middle housing, allowing applications to be fast-tracked, and the pre-zoning of properties allowed applicants to move straight to the development permit process. We need to look at further incentives for family-oriented housing, possibly something similar to our rental housing grants. Our new OCP and zoning bylaws have pre-zoned properties in our 5 urban centers, again allowing developers to save time and go straight to the DP process. We've waived public hearings for applications that are OCP compliant, again, to save time. We also need to continue to invest in technology, allowing our developers and home builders to apply online and to be able to do that, again, to save time. And we need to continue to invest in our Housing Opportunities Reserve Fund. This is a fund that helps us purchase land and partner with BC Housing on below-market and supportive housing projects that we know are needed in our community. So those are just a few of the many things that are happening.
Thank you, Colin. Over to you, gentlemen. Anything you'd like to add? 4 minutes. The floor is yours.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I would look at is, you know, touting a record in value of building permits, and, you know, the stock is odd to kind of something for a mayor to brag of, because our permits and that building element is determined by the hard costs of development. This means that, you know, more luxurious homes, and when they're built and when materials get more expensive, you know, they pay more for those permit fees. And coincidentally, the more luxurious and the more materials costs go up, the most expensive the home will be. So bragging about having the most money collected from, you know, those permits is truly just bragging about how expensive, you know, the housing is and has been created within this community.
Mr. Habib, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I do. I do want to add. First of all, I do have a concern. As a citizen today, mayor in the future, I'm concerned on how much millions of dollars the city has in land, tied up in land, when we have a crisis going on in our community. Why are we buying more land instead of turning it into affordable housing? Why are we acquiring these assets and not making, putting a roof over everyone's head? I don't know if there's builders in this room that can remember back to the days in Ellison when Neil and Fred Parent did Country Roads. It was a subdivision that they did, and they were square boxes. They were affordable. It was a great little community. They were building cheaper than anybody else because they put a system in place, they set it up, and their focus was affordable housing. And they did that, and it was an absolute massive success. I can say that the city, if we're going to start looking at acquiring land, if that's the intent, that we're buying this land to rezone, to turn into affordable housing, then bravo. But if we're buying this land to rezone and sell and move on down the road and not put the money into our community, what a shame. When we talk about all this development, 13,000 homes, that means there's been millions of dollars collected in DCCs. I haven't seen any infrastructure changes. Development can't go any further until we start really putting money into our infrastructure. There's a lot of change that has to happen, and it has to start going back to the point where we're building our roads and then adding development. We're getting way too far behind in a lot of areas, and that's truly what I believe. We really need to get together and collaborate with these builders and collaborate with CHBA and all of the experts in our community and in our field that will help move us forward. We can't just go in the direction that city councilor and mayor wants to go. We got to follow the direction of the people. We got to follow their dreams and needs. Sorry.
Mr. Basson, we'll give you a minute to respond there.
Well, there's a lot to respond there to. In regards to DCCs cover the costs of the infrastructure needed for our city to continue to grow. So without DCCs, and again, DCCs are done collaboratively with the development industry and by independent third parties. So this is the true cost of infrastructure. It's not just an inflated price for us to be able to just pad city reserves. And so we do actually purchase property and utilize it for affordable housing. That's what the Housing Opportunities Reserve Fund actually is. And then I don't actually recall sitting up here championing a value of housing. I said that we have 13,000 units that we've permitted in the last 5 years. A lot of that rental housing through our rental housing grants. And we need to continue to look at incentives like our infill challenge, where developers can build missing middle housing and be fast-tracked so that we can get family housing built quicker. So there's a lot of great things happening, and I want to be able to continue those and enhance those programs that are getting housing built in our community more than any other communities in the province.
Thank you very much. And we'll have lots of fun conversation on DCCs later, but right now we're talking about housing supply. But let's get into the next one. So despite their depth of knowledge, this one was given to us by the Association of Interior Realtors, our partners today. So despite their depth of knowledge, realtors often feel left out of the policy process. If elected, how would you better engage realtors on housing and real estate issues in Kelowna? For instance, would you support the formation of a housing roundtable that brings together all levels of government, industry groups, realtors, and nonprofit organizations to deal with housing issues? This one goes to Mr. Habib.
Thank you. I think it's imperative to bring people together. I think that's what makes us more creative and accomplished. I can say quite comfortably in the last 4 or 5 weeks, the amount of knowledge I've picked up from communicating with individuals in this community, different groups, different homeowners, different citizens, has been amazing. It's been the most learning experience of my life. I'm thankful for that. Because as we go through life, we get so caught up, and we have to recognize that there's experts in every field. When you're talking, I think they said about 1,000 realtors in the membership in the Okanagan. If there is really 1,000 minds to come together to solve problems, how blessed are we? Absolutely. Roundtables are the answer. In order to increase housing supply, you want to talk to the people that are out there dealing with the housing supply. They have solutions. I continually say, if we want to fix the problems on Highway 97, talk to the people who travel on Highway 97. If we want to fix problems in housing, we need to talk to the developers, the builders, the realtors. We need to bring them together in order not only to get them to where we need to go. The things we need done aren't 6 months away. They need 6 hours. We need to make decisions quicker. We need to get the holes in the ground and get the roofs up quicker than we have in the past. If all the stats we're getting between now, 2023 and 2040, if we're going to see an influx of 40,000 more residents to our community, we're never going to be able to house them. We're having trouble housing now. I know in 2018, we needed to come up with 286 homes. We're now saying in 2023, we've come up with 300 homes. Well, now that difference is it's 2 or 3 times the problem we had in 2018. So we're always behind the gun. We need to collaborate. We need to work together. The only way we can solve our problem is by bringing all of the citizens, hearing what they have to say, taking their advice, and moving forward as a team.
Thank you. Mr. Bazran, over to you to respond first.
Well, first of all, I want to say that realtors don't get enough credit for their part in helping build Kelowna and making it the fastest growing and progressive city that it is. They are often the first point of contact for people visiting our community for the first time and are our biggest champions. So we need people moving here in order to sustain our community, so that we have people working in our hospitals to care for us when we need it, to provide the personal services we use every day, to serve in our restaurants and coffee shops. Realtors play a major part in this growth and sustainability. Strong communication with the real estate industry is important, and that's why many times per year I'm invited to different real estate offices to speak to realtors about what's taking place in our community and answer questions and hear concerns. I also make myself available to meet with realtors and their clients who are looking to invest in our community through much needed residential and commercial development. So while there may not be a formal working group, realtors do actually help shape policy and growth in this city, but I'm open to creating a formal process to get their input. We definitely have a strong working relationship with CHBA and UDI, as well as our nonprofit sector, and I'm open to us working collaboratively to achieve and set goals to increase housing availability and affordability for our residents. So the answer is yes, I'd be open to that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dias.
As I've been out connecting with many people on their doorsteps, I've heard the same message continually over and over. That's, people and experts are just not consulted. They feel like they're ignored. So yes, we have incredibly talented individuals at City Hall, but yes, we also have some incredibly intelligent residents. That's why I would be committing to putting together and hosting a housing summit. A housing summit would bring together groups like CHBA, UDI, UBCO, realtors, environmentalists, community groups, and also mayors from across the Okanagan. It is fine to communicate with mayors outside of the Okanagan, but the Okanagan is unique. We need to communicate with the mayors that are within our area. We need to get everyone's ideas together and come up with solutions as Team Okanagan. In a recent discussion with regards to a realtor that has a group of individuals that they meet with on a regular basis, they had reached out continuously to try to set meetings with the city and the other candidate, and regrettably they were rejected on those meetings. Some of those meetings were with regards to simple housing solutions. I believe it is truly important that we need to listen to our residents and engage them for some of the answers that our community is experiencing.
Mr. Habib, appreciating that we're still on the clock, do you have anything you want to add to that, or do you want to allow Colin to respond to that comment?
No, Collins, feel free to respond. I think we're all on the same page here as far as working together. We need to collaborate. We need to get things done. We're not going to get it done by ourselves, and it should not be left up to the city to make all the decisions. Look, I feel there's too much government in our world already, so we need to start being a little more independent and taking the bull by the horns.
Mr. Bazran.
Sure, I would just add that mayors of Penticton, Vernon, West Kelowna, and myself meet quarterly, and oftentimes they have deferred to myself to take our message to Victoria due to the fact that I co-chair the BC Urban Mayors Caucus. But certainly those meetings absolutely take place, and we're always looking at ways that we can collaborate as a region, because we know if we coordinate as a region, certainly we'll get more attention than if we are each fighting our individual battles. So I think I'll just leave it there. Thanks.
Well, I will say that I took a drive across the bridge and went over and spoke with Gord Milson, and he had a totally different opinion than what was just said.
It's called the Intermunicipal Mayors Group, and we meet quarterly, so I'm not sure if he could say those meetings didn't take place. I could show you the minutes. They, in fact, actually happened.
All right, we'll get back to that in a minute, but this is exactly what I dreamed of. Internet people, are you happy? All right, so our third question, and Tom, I think this one's going to be in your wheelhouse here. So, Are you aware of the costs associated with energy efficiency standards in new homes? And how will you balance affordability with our energy efficiency goals, especially knowing that older homes are the largest carbon emitters?
I'm well aware of the costs associated with trying to squeeze out an extra 1 or 2% out of existing homes. In the energy efficiency discussion, it's important to recognize that a 25-year-old home is 100% less efficient than a new home. That's why, as a city and a partner of the provincial and federal governments, we need to advocate to improve the energy efficiency in older homes. I've committed to advocating for and implementing a property-assessed clean energy program. It would take some work alongside the provincial governments to work towards that, but PACE programs are accepted nationally and already exist in communities of Halifax, Toronto, and Guelph within our country.
Colin, your first chance to respond there.
First of all, collaboration is very important. Again, we have a strong relationship with CHBA and the building industry, and as example, our most popular employee in the development department sits on the CHBA board. So we need to find a balanced approach when it comes to doing our part to mitigate climate change, and while also doing our best to keep housing affordable. So as STEP Code continues to advance, transparent implementation plans and appropriate staffing resources are all important in preparing industry and consumers. Along with robust consultation with industry, well-documented transition times that are hopefully agreed upon by all parties is also a priority, so there are no surprises and everyone understands the vision and goals we're trying to achieve. It's also equally important that we have the right structures and staff in place in the planning department so as to not again cause delays and therefore add costs. And because we are growing so fast, new buildings and homes get all the attention. But these homes are being built to the new STEP Code standards and sometimes even beyond. But we can't forget the older housing stock, which is exactly why we are in the process right now of working on a home energy retrofit grant program in partnership with stakeholders like Fortis BC. So we can help with affordability by continuing to pursue grant funding from higher levels of government to help cover costs of infrastructure needed for new developments and retrofit programs like the one I've just mentioned. And the federal government's Housing Opportunities Reserve Fund is a great example of this, and advocacy I'm doing with the BC Urban Mayors Caucus with the provincial government will help ensure BC gets its fair share of that money for much needed housing programs. Thank you.
Mr. Habib, anything you want to add to this on saving the planet?
Yeah, absolutely. Vote for me. No, sorry. Look, let me just indicate, I've been a builder in this community for decades, going back 30 plus years. I was in the supply chain and then I got into the construction side. I will say that in the last 25 years, almost every home that's being developed has had to live up to the building code. We've been building our 2,000 homes, which is a term from back in the day. It's a history term, but we've been building energy efficient homes for decades. The problem isn't that we're not building energy efficient homes. The problem is that we're not keeping up on funding for the homes 30 years plus. We need to go back to that and start retrofitting those homes. I recognize Colin saying there's programs in place. As a homeowner, if you go online and you try to look for a program, which I did during this exercise, it's impossible to find a way to be able to find funding to retrofit your home. These things have to be on the forefront. We're not communicating with our builders. We're not communicating with our homeowners. We're not communicating with individuals. If we bring everybody together, if we got the CHBA and we call Daniel and Daniel says, here's the information packet, here's where you can get funding, here's how you can get it done, you can get instant hot water, you can change your windows, you can re-insulate your attic. There are so many options out there that people talk about, but they're not accessible. I haven't been able to access anything just hitting the internet to trying to find a plan that we can put. That's the problem. It's that most people don't have any idea about construction. They want to make their home energy efficient. They want to save the world, but there's no easy access. That's what has to change.
Mr. Dias, anything you want to add to that or take it home?
I believe that what Mr. Habib is speaking about is right along the lines of what my comments were. The PACE program is we recognize that the energy efficiency of older homes is far less than what any of the new builds are. So if we're going to seriously look at doing something positive for the environment, it would be looking at a program that would assist with the funding of the retrofitting of those older homes so they become more efficient. That is going to help our environment tremendously.
Thank you very much. All right, everyone's favorite topic, development cost charges. Whew. All right, so the question posed to the candidates, and we'll draw that name momentarily. Development cost charges, known as DCCs, are a hotly discussed topic when it comes to housing affordability. On one hand, we need these fees to pay for critical infrastructure like roads and water treatment. On another, these costs directly impact housing affordability when misapplied. Our builders have specifically mentioned they want to know what construction sand is when it's going in at the park. So, for instance, a lakeside custom home in one area of town pays about the same amount in DCCs as a 1,000 square foot box in the same neighborhood. 5,000 square feet, 1,000 square feet, same amount of DCCs. What steps would you take to ensure DCCs are equitable and fairly calculated? And would you commit to a review of the DCCs if elected? And let's see where we're going here. Mr. Basran.
Well, there need to be more regular updates, I admit that, of the DCC program so that increases aren't so drastic and are manageable. These updates will continue to be done collaboratively with industry partners. I am open to finding a more equitable way to approach DCCs through consultation and looking at best practices elsewhere. I know per square footage is often talked about, and that could be a possibility, but we need to be careful that we don't continue to grow our infrastructure deficit in the process. I know some municipalities also allow DCCs to be paid at the development permit stage instead of at rezoning, which will help lessen carrying costs, and this is something I would be willing to explore in this coming term. I think it's also important to point out that the DCC assist factor, I know we're getting right into the weeds here, but the DCC assist factor in Kelowna is a bit higher compared to other municipalities and also helps keep costs down, and that's not often talked about. Housing affordability needs to be a collaborative effort, and this isn't something a municipality can fix on its own. So as we know, we are one of the fastest growing cities in the country, and we've heard loud and clear that infrastructure needs to keep up with this growth. But funding from higher levels of government through grant programs is inconsistent, and that's why the BC Urban Mayors Caucus has been pushing for a steady and stable source of funding from the province and the feds. In the meantime, our strong relationships will continue to serve us well when it comes to infrastructure funding. For example, a couple weeks ago, I had a meeting with the Minister of Transportation, which resulted in grant funding for design work of the Clement Avenue Highway 33 extension. This is a DCC road that if partially funded by other levels of government, helps reduce the burden on builders and developers. And another advocacy strategy we should look into is a PST rebate on construction materials, similar to Saskatchewan, and a GST exemption for some construction materials from the federal government, because higher levels of government need to come to the table to help solve this issue as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Habib, I saw some eyebrows there, so let's start with you.
I didn't get them done yet, so that's the problem. They're getting my eyes. But all my concern would be as a citizen today, when it comes to DCCs, I've been in this community for 43 years. I think that could be as long as Colin's been on the earth with us.
Close.
Close. Okay. So in saying that, I've got as much experience at this table as anybody else, and I'll tell you, as a builder, when we're paying DCCs, it hurts, right? But we recognize it's a necessity because we need it in our community with infrastructure. But when you don't see infrastructure coming and taking place, it's really devastating. So when I want to do a development, and I'm going to go down Lakeshore and build a 100-home development, and I know that people coming to this development are going to be concerned because they can't get in and out. They don't want to get in traffic. They're going to say, well, look, I don't want to buy here because there's no infrastructure. I don't understand why our infrastructure is so far behind. I don't understand why we're spending $600,000 from the government and $600,000 from ourselves, and I mean provincial government, to do a study on a roadway. Seriously? We've studied it before. Can we not just get to work? Can we not just get it done? I'm concerned about I'm concerned about these studies, and I've seen several studies, and I applaud that these need to happen, but I'm going to say hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars that went into these studies is stuff we already know. Why do we have to put it on paper Why can we not just meet in a room like this, just make decisions and move forward as a community? Why are we spending money and suffering and allowing others to suffer while we sit down and do studies, this new study that's going to happen, that's going to take a year or 2 or 3 before we even get to actual digging, putting a shovel in the ground?
I'm going to jump in there and hand it over to Tom. Make sure you get some time to talk on this
Sorry,
topic.
Tom.
No worries. I was listening. It was all good. We know that the increased DCCs increase the cost of housing. In the last 2 years, DCCs have increased between 7 to 32%, depending upon the type of location of the home, while park charges have also doubled. For example, the DCCs for a new single-family home in the North End has increased by over $17,000 in the last 2 years alone. That home will now pay over $40,000 in DCCs. Yet, as David had mentioned, sidewalks aren't built, street lighting is lacking, and bus shelters are uninviting. And major road projects are stalled. Even though there was a discussion or a last-minute announcement with regards to a $600,000 funding level for a major road expansion, the timing of it, I think for most of us, is a little bit suspect. Our team did a little bit of calculations on what that road extension would cost, and it's somewhere in range of about $35 to $40 million with regards to the total cost. So a $600,000 amount mentioned weeks out from an election gets a little suspect. You know, my question is, and I think it's the question that many residents are asking, or I know many residents are asking within our community, is what are we getting for our money's worth? What are we actually receiving for those DCCs? Because they know that they're being charged, but there's very limits with regards to what they're actually seeing happening within our community. And that goes to what David had mentioned. Thank you.
I think we've gained a minute somewhere, so if we can put 60 seconds up on the clock for Mr. Bazin to respond.
Sure. First of all, it's not a study to extend Highway 33. It's actually design money. None of you here would build homes without a design or blueprints. It's to actually design the road so we can actually build it. And it's not just $600,000. It's matching funds, so it's $1.2 million to design the road. Mr. Habib made the comment about a lakeshore road development. Well, that's why we're building South Perimeter Road, which is a DCC road. Those DCCs collected go back into the projects to help provide the infrastructure, like South Perimeter Road. And anyone who says that they will reduce DCCs is increasing our infrastructure deficit, which in turn limits development because we lack the infrastructure for growth. It would also increase tax costs for everyone in our community who have already paid towards our infrastructure, and that isn't equitable. So again, the costs of the infrastructure are fixed. They have to come from somewhere. We have had a user pay system, and what I'm hearing is that instead, all of you in this room who've already paid DCCs should be subsidizing that growth.
We'll cut you
I
off
am
there.
a fan of the DCC program.
Keep this going.
Can we get another minute?
We'll give you one more minute.
Perfect. That's not what's being said. I'm not saying reduce DCCs. I just want to see value for my money. I just want to see these South Perimeter roads and all these other roads we've been talking about for years. I want to see them come to fruition. I don't want to know that they're coming. I want to know we need them now. It wasn't yesterday that, well, you know, if we're talking about like we did when we were talking about needing 300 residences and we're getting them 5 years later, we don't need roads that we need today to come 5 years from now. That's the issue I have. When they collected DCCs from me in 2017, $75,000 in DCCs on a commercial building I did downtown and $29,000 for parking, I haven't seen a thing. Nowhere near my business have I seen anything. So I don't know where this money goes, and I don't know why we're not seeing any results. That's all I'm saying. Let's put a shovel in the ground and get to work.
Anything else you want to add there, Tom?
I think everybody, from what I hear within this community, understands that they need to pay taxes and they need to pay DCCs, but they're not seeing the benefit of what those, what they're paying in rewards back to the community. An example of something that could be done is there's been a lot of variances with regards to towers in our downtown core. And we understand that there's DCCs that they pay on the first 12 floors, and then there's DCCs that they pay when they get a variance and can go another 13 stories. but there is no other costs that they pay associated with that other 13 stories other than the same DCCs as the first 12 and tax revenue that comes in the future. If you're going to get a variance and we're lacking in some of our funding with regards to covering off our infrastructure, and they're now having a penthouse which is able to sell at millions and millions of dollars, there should be more coming back to the community on that additional variance that is given than just straight DCCs.
Thank you. All right, from one of the room's favorite topics to one of my favorite topics, NIMBYs. So one of the largest detractors to housing affordability and building homes for the missing middle are NIMBYs. Short for not in my backyard, NIMBYs are happy to see more housing built, as long as it doesn't obstruct their view or impact their neighborhood. These groups often have success when housing approvals move to council, and we've seen that a couple of times over the last term. What is your stance on neighborhood opposition groups, and as mayor, what steps would you take to ensure the needs of the missing middle are met in all areas of Kelowna? And we will give this question to David Habib.
Great. Listen, I can tell you we've all experienced this as a builder in some shape or form. When you go into a new neighborhood and you're trying to develop and make way for more residences, it's always difficult for those that live there to accept. I can say quite comfortably, I've always been a fan of communicating with the neighborhood. I really think when somebody's going to develop in a neighborhood that it's your opportunity to sell yourself to the neighbors and let them know why they need you. I think when it comes to neighborhoods that I've worked with or people I've worked with, I've been able to communicate and get what I need. I've been able to develop the way we need to develop. I think the part that takes people by surprise is they envision something that they hear. They haven't had any intimate details. They haven't had any dialogue with someone. And once they get the ability to communicate with a developer or a builder, they get a little more comfortable because they start to understand what they're getting. I think what's really scary to not in my backyard is Airbnbs and daily rentals and all kinds of other things that might come with it, not families. When you got a family moving into a home, they usually care about their investment. It's usually the biggest and only investment in their life that means anything to them that they're going to hang on to for a lifetime. So it can very well shade the picture. So I really strongly believe that communicating with the neighborhood is the way we need to do it.
Thank you very much. We'll go to Mr. Dias to respond first.
You know, there are people who will never approve of any change, but I think that term NIMBY is used to dismiss real and valid concerns of the community. Our community is frustrated. They believe their voices are being ignored, and a small circle of people are influencing the decision making. They approve of an OCP, which is consistently ignored and altered. I'm committed to listening to city staff and applicants and neighbors before making a decision. We have to plan for growth, but we can't ignore the people that live here. Everyone deserves to be heard. I was walking through the Lower Mission area, and there was a development that was happening, and these people have lived in their house for over 20 years. And they were understanding that development has to happen within their area. They realized that they moved here at one particular point in time, so they accepted the idea that other people want to live here too. And we all know it's a beautiful place. Many people will come to live here, and we're all in agreement. But what their frustration was there was a building that was happening right beside them, a major large building, and initially the setback was 60 feet. Then it went to 30. Then it went to 15. And originally, then the height was at 2 stories, then it went to 3 stories, then it went to 3 stories or almost 4 with a deck on top. Their frustration happened to be that they're just not being heard. And they said they put together a neighborhood association to try to be heard at City Hall. They were ignored, and they were called NIMBYs. They're not NIMBYs. They're just people who live here who want to be heard within our community. We can't please everyone. We know that it ends up being there's going to be discussions, and you walk away from those discussions, and not everybody's going to get what they want, and that's probably a good discussion. But we need to start listening to our residents.
Mr. Basran.
So I do take exception to part of the statement in the question that says these groups often have success when housing approvals move to council. I believe this council, evidenced by the fact we are seeing record-setting investment in our community, have provided strong leadership when it comes to approving much-needed housing applications. As mentioned, over 13,000 units of housing in the last 5 years. Input is important. That's why we have public hearings, and I know many of you in this room, as a result of city policy, have to go and walk the neighborhoods in which you have applications. And I know that you do a great job, and thank you for that job you do, because it's not easy to knock on someone's door and say, hey, guess what, your neighborhood's going to change. So thank you for the work that you do to help facilitate that change and listen and incorporate those into your designs and into your projects. So it's tough. But at the end of the day, leadership requires making strong decisions for the betterment of the entire community as a whole, not just one particular interest group. And so I would continue as your mayor to provide that strong leadership, because you can't make everybody happy, as already been said. And in order to get much needed housing projects approved, as is mentioned, the provincial government has allowed municipalities the option to eliminate public hearings for applications that are compliant with our OCP. We just approved a new OCP that had the most robust consultation with the public in our city's history. And so why do we then need to have these redundant steps in place if it's already been approved? And again, to encourage more missing middle housing, we have made mortgage helpers secondary suites legal in all neighborhoods, and we eliminated DCCs for secondary suites as well. And as I've mentioned, we have pre-zoned properties that have once again allowed one home to be removed, and in the place of it have up to 4. So these are things that are saving time and money.
Thank you very much. We're going to have to keep moving for right now, but if we get time, we'll come back to this question. So, moving into the topic of some of these companies that Mr. Habib named that I cannot because I don't want to be sued. What is your plan for attracting the talent needed to run our local economy? So this isn't just trades, but healthcare, service, and tourism, when the cost of housing is so high, especially when they must compete with tourists and short-term rentals, companies I cannot name, for places to stay. And that one goes to Mr. Dias.
As a former president of the Chamber of Commerce and a small business owner myself, I am very familiar with the challenges of attracting talent. The high cost of housing is a huge impediment within our community, and building more missing middle housing is an important step. Basement suites, townhomes, and carriage homes are far less likely to be used for short-term rentals. Are we building housing for home buyers, or are we building housing for investors? We need to ask that question. We are growing, but we must grow smarter and more responsibly to attract individuals to this community and allow for spaces for families to be part of this community.
Thank you. Mr. Bazarin, over to you to respond.
So we've talked a lot about housing already, so let's switch gears for a moment and talk about how else we attract people to Kelowna. First of all, we need to be a city where everyone feels welcomed. We need to continue to denounce acts of racism and discrimination and continue to champion diversity and inclusion. We need to protect our natural assets like our lake and our mountains by building our city differently than we have in the past. Imagine Kelowna and our new 2040 OCP are great guides for this. We need to have a strong economy and continue to attract businesses and entrepreneurs who are going to continue to diversify our economy and provide good paying jobs. We need to keep investing in arts and cultural amenities like a new performing arts center and supporting the private sector as it builds cool new spaces for live music and outlets for our creative sector to entertain us. We need to continue to advocate to the provincial and federal governments to create training spaces for trades and much needed medical professionals and other skilled labor that is in high demand. We have short-term rental regulations that have been in place for 2 summers, and there is a comprehensive report coming with data and recommended changes to make sure we strike a balance between welcoming visitors but ensuring those who need homes have them. And we at the city are prepared to collaborate with you on creative ways to create temporary worker housing for the trades that we are so desperately needing, and to help build all housing we are approving in Kelowna, and creative zoning changes. For example,
I'm going to have to jump in there and allow Mr. Habib to respond to this.
Thank you. First of all, it's not difficult to attract people to Kelowna. Just the environment, the lake, Big White, the golf courses, the wineries. That is so inviting that everybody that visits wants to move here, wants to live here. There's no question about the beauty of our land and our home. The biggest problem we have is affordability. We're heading into an area that becomes very difficult. We recognize that over the last 8 years, Council and Colin have done a lot to, or they have at least have indicated they've done a lot to try and bring affordable housing to the table so that people can live here. When the superintendent of the RCMP is saying she can't recruit officers because they can't afford to live here, that's a pretty scary thing, that we can't even buy safety. We can't do anything to get safer because we can't find the people. That means we have to go back to the drawing board and determine what we got to do to make housing affordable. I can tell you, without fail, there's a ton of land. Even when you get to Orchard Park, there's a ton of land sitting there, what I call vacant agricultural land, that's in the ASC that's not being farmed. It's not being farmed because it's not financially beneficial to farm the land. Orchards are falling by the wayside because they're not money-making endeavors. The simple thing is we need to pull some of that land out of the ALC and turn it into affordable housing. That's the way we get there. We have to do it. We can't sit there and think about it. If we have to challenge the ALC, times have changed. The world's changed. Every community in this province is having a housing shortage. It's time we step up and start doing our job. I can tell you, Minister Eby is saying he's committing $500 million to jump-starting rental housing programs in the province. Well, look, let's get our chunk of that $500 million. Let's get to work. Let's get it done. I think we all know the solution to the answer because everybody in this room has been touched by development in one way or another. Let's get to work.
Mr. Dias, the floor is yours to take these thoughts home.
Message is clear. I mean, we, in working with many businesses and, luckily within the business that I operate, we service somewhere in range of about 1,000 businesses within this community. And I don't think we walk into one business and they say that, they have all the staff that they actually need. We're experiencing restaurants that are, closing at certain times. I've even seen right now with regards to banks that have days that it ends up being they're shut down just because they can't find the staff. That staffing has to do with affordable housing, that missing middle housing that is coming here, which will allow us to attract the talent. It's missing within this community. As we have said up here, there has been a lot of development and the city has done a good job at getting that development there. The difficulty with it is it's not affordable. A lot of it happens to be things that our investors are taking and they're ins to Airbnbs, and they're not places within this community where people can live financially and be still able to make their ends meet. That's what we need to bring to the table and be able to put together programs as elected officials that work for the whole Okanagan Valley.
You guys have 20 seconds there, and Colin looks like he has something to
So
say.
creative zoning is also needed. For example, Emil Anderson Construction, I see Greg Gasling here. We allowed them to build housing above their industrial property, which is creating workforce housing for not only their company, but Anodyne Technologies, which is an aerospace company in town. So we need to be more creative with our zoning to build the housing where the workers already are.
Thank you very much. Okay, fresh round. Question number 7. You guys are doing great, hanging in there. So, and this one, probably the longest question of the bunch. Kelowna does more than most to encourage rental development, but we still find ourselves lacking the homes to meet local demand and are often featured on lists showcasing places with the highest rents in the country. I think we saw that earlier this week. With Kelowna already far behind the supply and demand curve, how do we mitigate against these new cost pressures and incentivize new rentals to prevent our current supply from shortfall from getting worse? What will you do in the next 4 years to get more major rental housing projects online? And this question goes to David Habib.
Okay, good. Listen, again, it's kind of, I hate to repeat myself, they kind of all fall into the same category. I really believe, without fail, that if we start creating programs to, look, if I owned a home downtown and wanted to do a rental, whether I'm going to sweep my basement or do whatever, it comes at a cost. A lot of people are already maxed out on the mortgage payment. They can't afford to do these renovations. They can't afford to add that carriage house or that extra suite. If we get to the point where DCCs on a carriage house are $25,000, and we get to the point we can't even get started, because by the time you pay permit, DCCs, and drawings, you're into this thing for $50,000. It's unattainable. We have to come up with a plan to give funding to help to get these things off the ground. And I can assure you, everybody wants a mortgage helper. Everybody would buy into the program. The cost is just too huge. We got to change it so it's more affordable, and that these people that want to bring rentals into their backyard have that ability. It's dollars and cents.
Mr. Dias.
Kelowna has some great incentive programs, like the rental housing tax exemption, but we can do more. One option I'll explore is waiving all or part of the DCCs on new affordable units that are built under CMHC's MLI Select program. MLI Select program provides better financing for projects that meet certain standards, including having 10 to 20% affordable units within them. CMHC does all of the monitoring, and that is an important element with regards to it. We have seen a lot of development come to this community, and part of their passage has been that they will put affordable housing into those developments and establish variances on those. But the question has always been, who would monitor that affordable housing? And who would check to make certain that that affordable housing lasts the length of time that when the first tenant didn't move out, it went up to market rate? CMHC program monitors that affordable housing for a 10-year period. For many of you know who do financing, you have to report to a bank on an annual basis and give them your financials and the rent roll and all the rest of that. That's what CMHC would do. So it would maintain that this becomes and stays affordable housing for that period of time. CMHC does all the monitoring, so the city doesn't have to. Builders have told me the math currently sometimes works out, but definitely works out when there's waiving of the DCCs on the affordable units. And that would make a big difference and guarantee that there's affordable units within that community and they don't change the rental structure on them.
Mr. Basran.
Well, I appreciate it's been acknowledged that we have had great success with our rental housing grants program, which have seen thousands of units approved and more on the way. And I too would look at expanding or increasing those grants, as well as looking at property tax exemptions, similar to the revitalization tax exemptions we have in areas where we want to see new development. This was successful in kickstarting downtown development in my first term as mayor. We have pre-zoned properties in each of our 5 urban centers for higher density development, and this will allow developers, as I've mentioned, to move straight to the development permit stage, saving time and money. Our new OCP also directs higher density housing developments along frequent transit routes. This makes good planning sense and will also reduce parking requirements, which also adds costs to projects. The province has also hinted that communities that adhere to this principle will be viewed more favorably when applying for grant funding, particularly for transit infrastructure. Our recently approved density bonus program in the zoning bylaw also rewards housing, which we believe will help increase the number of units being built in our city. And lastly, I would say just a couple of comments. Taking land out of the ALC is not something that just simply happens. The Agricultural Land Commission is very strict when it comes to these requirements. We've tried to get the property out by Springfield, which has been mentioned, and they denied it. And also, of course, again, waiving DCCs places the infrastructure burden back on you. So you are going to be subsidizing this candidate's plan for affordable housing. How does that make your life affordable? And we also have already plans in place to keep rental housing in perpetuity. We have housing agreements that we sign with developers when they build purpose-built rental housing, with the guarantee that they keep their housing as rental for 10 years, and they have to pay the grants back if they choose to take it out into market housing. And we have rental-only subzones that keep rental housing in perpetuity as zoned for rental housing.
Mr. Habib, Tom, do you have something I want to add there?
You know, it's important to to look at on the topic of affordable housing, I want to bring up a vote that was done by our mayor. During COVID-19, when people were losing their jobs and livelihoods and unable to pay rent, the other candidate voted to move funding out of affordable housing. He wanted to move that funding towards promoting Kelowna. This was in July of 2020, and COVID was still front and center, and thankfully, the majority of council overruled him. So when we speak about affordable housing, and is it truly important to you and truly important to the community, you know, moving money out of affordable housing during a worsening housing affordability crisis, it's not something that it benefits our community at all.
David, 1 minute to respond and take this thing home, or do you want to cede that to Colin to respond?
No, I want to speak. Thank you. First of all, if people are going to sit here and tell me today, across from our biggest mall in the community, that we can't pull land out of the ALC, then we got the wrong person behind the wheel. If it's a challenge that we have to take to the ALC, that's what we do. We need and we should demand the land be removed for affordable housing. It's that simple. It's in the heart of downtown. We're not going to have a farmer there growing cherries. It's just not going to happen. I really believe that we need to fight for these things. I can assure you, look, we're all here. Vote me in and I'll take that fight on and I'll get you the results you want. It's that simple.
I would just say that Brad Bennett owns that property. And if Brad Bennett can't get that property out of the ALR with a Liberal government, I look forward to seeing how Mr. Habib is going to make that happen.
Guys, you're spoiling my pointed questions for later.
I can only say I've dazzled many, not only in the ring, but on the street. And I will be sure to bring you along to mentor you, Colin, so that you can do it next time.
All right, let's get this thing back on the rails. 8th question.
Sorry.
So there is another aspect to building in this community, which is the clear demand for single-family, ground-oriented homes. What compromises or changes would you make to zoning bylaws to get more single-family, ground-oriented homes built, if any? Mr. Dias.
People still want to live in single-family homes. It's very obviously. The people that are coming here and escaping Toronto and Vancouver aren't moving here. Most of them aren't moving here to live in another condo. But we must adapt. There is a limited amount of land that is available here. That's why I believe new single-family homes should be on small lots. This means we can fit a lot more homes in more dense areas and will be much more affordable for families. There's still opportunities for infill in Kelowna, and the land that is not in the ALR, until you get a hold of it.
Thank you.
And, Dave had mentioned a perfect example of this. The Country Roads development is a great example. It's a bare land strata with affordable small homes that people can buy.
Mr. Basran.
Well, I'll just start by saying that in the new OCP, we needed to signal to the community that we have to build our city differently than the way we have in the past. We can't keep sprawling because it's bad for the environment, and it's also costly for our taxpayers, again, due to the high cost of infrastructure and the amenities needed. So with the current suburban neighborhoods already under construction, there is enough land available for almost 10 years under current consumption rates. However, what I keep hearing from those of you in the industry is that there just aren't enough lots coming online soon enough, and consumers are purchasing elsewhere, particularly in neighboring communities. So I want to work with these landowners and staff to find ways to get these lands serviced sooner so that lots will be available in a more timely manner and we don't lose future residents to neighboring municipalities. When we passed the OCP, planning staff also committed to regularly scheduled updates on consumption rates and land availability so that we can adjust accordingly in a timely manner so that there's no lag time when it comes to single-family lot inventory. And so the fact is we will need to relook at our permanent growth boundary and make adjustments as needed in a timely manner through regular and transparent reporting to council. I agree with the need for more infill housing, and that's again why we did the infill challenge, which now has an opportunity for a property owner to take one single family unit and turn it into up to 4. And again, that's why we allow them to fast track the process. And it's also why these properties have been pre-zoned, again, to save time and to allow developers to move straight to the development permit process and not have to go through a rezoning. So I think I'll leave it there and over to
Mr. Habib.
Thank you. I'm not going to touch this question because I believe we've spoken about it. What I want to talk about is the OCP that Colin keeps bringing up. I seriously have an issue with the OCP that we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars developing, and that we ignore, that we throw out the window. I'm a developer. I'm pro-development. I want to see development. But when we go into our downtown core and we now have 2 structures that are over 40 stories, when the tallest tower is only supposed to be 26, we're not talking 28, we're not talking 30, we're talking 40 plus. And we throw the OCP out the window and we just pretend it didn't exist because some developer came in. I don't know what he did to get there, but I can assure you if that developer was me, I would never get there, okay? So I'm curious on how this has happened and why. That's one. Number 2, we're building a 685-seat nightclub, not a music entertainment place where kids are going to go and the high school's going to entertain us, because we got the Rotary Center for the Arts, we got the Kelowna Community Theater for that. These are also funded by our tax-paying dollars. What I'm going to tell you is when we're going in, we're throwing the OCP out the window for the maximum of a 500-seat capacity in our community for any nightclub. Okay, and I'm in the nightclub business. I understand they're vital to our community, but putting it right next door to a condominium complex where people have spent $1, $2, or $3 million to be on a top floor, how is this even possible? How does this even make sense? How did we get there when everybody in the neighboring building, the majority of them are looking at you telling you, no, we don't want it in our neighborhood? That goes back to why you need to communicate with the people in your neighborhood. I'm working with that group right now, and I can assure you that I'm getting a lot of negativity on the fact that there was a united front to put a 685-seat nightclub on Ellis Street. It doesn't matter what we think. The RCMP have already spoken out in opposition, saying they don't have the manpower. What are we doing? How are we getting there? I don't know.
All right, I'm going to jump in there. I'll remind the candidates this is a question about ground-oriented missing middle single-family housing. And, 16 stories on a building is 16 more stories of housing in a room of builders and developers. But Mr. Dias, 1 minute if you want to close this thought out. Nothing to add? All right. Well, then
I'll take it.
You know what? I'm going to allow Tom because he's supposed to be the one to end it. But if we have time, we will get into a vigorous discussion about the OCP because it sounds like that's where the crowd wants this to go. Final question before we get into our pointed questions, and this one goes to, I should be able to remember, Colin Basran. 2 weeks ago, Minister of Housing and possible future Premier David Eby released a 3-page outline of how he plans to get more housing built if he becomes Premier. This plan requires collaboration and buy-in from municipalities. What are your thoughts on this plan? And as future potential mayor, what do you agree or disagree with?
So as I've continually mentioned, the City of Kelowna is a leader when it comes to housing. So I'm not surprised that some of what he's proposing is already being done or has been advocated for. For those without homes, our Journey Home strategy puts us in good position to receive more funding for supportive housing and much needed supports which he is proposing. For rental and market housing, he is calling for upzoning or pre-zoning of properties, which we're already doing, as well as for the legalization of secondary suites, which we did some time ago and recently eliminated the DCCs for. However, he is calling for up to 3 units be allowed on a traditional single-family lot. While we have tried that with our infill challenge, it has worked well. Doing so in all neighborhoods would put significant strain on infrastructure. So we would advocate for matching funding that would allow the infrastructure to keep pace with this proposed growth. He is recommending a flipping tax, which is what we actually wanted instead of speculation tax. So it's with this in mind that I will continue to call for the end of speculation tax if this flipping tax is in fact brought in. And I think there might be pushback in getting rid of some strata restrictions, which may be upsetting to some homeowners. But I'm also in favor of setting municipal targets and publicly reporting out on those. But I do worry about how overreaching some of his plans are that may remove some autonomy from local governments. We are always told that we know our communities best, so losing some potential oversight or authority is something that needs to be monitored if and when his legislation is rolled out. But of course, we'll need to work collaboratively with our local MLAs when that happens. So I support increased funding for housing and homelessness, including the $500 million in capital funding for rental housing acquisition strategy, which enables nonprofits to purchase affordable rentals. And I also support the increased supports and services for people living in supportive housing and continued build out of complex care housing, both of which have been a huge advocacy focus for me growing up. Our infrastructure deficit is already large enough. It's $500 million because we've had councils in the past who have said, you know what, we're going to push off that project and we're going to let somebody else deal with it. As your mayor, I'm not going to continue to push off those projects. We need new rec centers. We need new investments in parks. We need things to keep up with our growing community that can no longer be pushed off and say, we'll tackle it down the road just so we can conveniently say, we kept your taxes low. We're going to make sure we do those projects in an efficient and cost-effective manner, but we can't keep pushing or kicking the infrastructure deficit can down the road. And I will continue to invest in key projects that our community needs and have the appropriate mechanisms in place to help fund those. Thank you.
All right, we're going to go through a couple of these questions here, probably about 3 of them. So we'll put 2 minutes up on the clock, and if any candidate, we'll draw random, and then if candidates want to add to it, we'll certainly do that. So the first most popular question, BC Urban Mayor's Caucus boasts of advocacy. The property transfer tax rebate for first-time home buyers has a maximum purchase price of $525,000, which is useless here. Thoughts? David Habib.
It's useless. That's it. There's nothing more we can say. When the average price of a home in our community is $1 million, I don't know what that does at 525. Needs to be addressed. I don't know what else I can tell you. It just doesn't make any sense.
Mr. Dias.
As I had mentioned earlier, when I was with the Chamber of Commerce, I work with Canadian Home Builders Associations to look at indexing the property transfer tax. At that point in time, it was substantially lower, and we rewrote the policy that is in place at this particular point in time. It is obviously, as we know, it's a cash cow for the province. There's money that comes into that, and sometimes even if it ends up being you have one particular property and you own it in one company and you're transferring it over to another company, or you own it individually and you're transferring it over to the other company, you have to get an exemption not to basically pay the property transfer tax on that property twice. So it takes advocating. You know, if there is a body of individuals that are representing this province of mayors through from the larger communities, you know, we need to see. We've seen a lot of discussion about with regards to care beds. We've seen a lot of discussion with regards to prolific offenders. We've seen those particular type of things, and the reports have been completed. But you need to be able to. I mean, we want to see action. We want to see things particularly done, and for to have it at the $525,000 mark, as this community knows, our average house, as you started off, is over $1 million. So that is something that needs to be addressed, and we need to speak, you know, very candidly for the Okanagan Valley.
Mr. Bazrin, any thoughts to add to this?
Can I hear the question again, please? If we wouldn't mind. Yeah, I wouldn't mind hearing the question again, please.
The property transfer tax exemption from the BC Mayor Urban Caucus boasts of advocacy. The property transfer tax exemption for first-time home buyers is at $525,000, which is useless here. Your thoughts?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for the question, and I agree with some of the comments made, and looking at advocating for you know, higher thresholds. But I'm not sure why the BC Urban Mayor's Caucus comment was made, but I'll just touch on that. And that it has 4 key advocacy items that it's been lobbying the provincial government on, because they are all being faced by the 13 largest municipalities in our province, that being social issues, housing affordability, transportation, and a new fiscal arrangement with our provincial government, because each municipality gets grant funding, but sometimes grant funding is hit or miss, and we need regular and stable funding to be able to tackle some of the issues that we've been talking about, and a new fiscal relationship with the provincial government would help rectify that. And our 4 priority areas were actually endorsed by the BC Chamber of Commerce, because they recognized that these were common to all of the municipalities and memberships, not only in large municipalities but small ones as well. As a result of the advocacy, 2 years ago there was no such thing as complex care. In the last budget by the provincial government, $165 million was allocated to complex care as a result of the advocacy work that we did. 20 of those spaces now coming to Kelowna. Repeat offender, prolific offender action. There was nothing being done to address the chronic crime and catch and release cycle of our justice system. As a result of this advocacy, they brought experts together that have now put together recommendations to help make systemic changes to our health and justice systems to deal with repeat offenders, for them to get the help that they need for their underlying mental health and addiction issues, but also to make sure that they face consequences for their actions. Our RCMP are just as frustrated as everyone else with catching people and then seeing them caught without them actually getting help to make their lives better. So again, advocacy is a really key component of moving our city forward, and I've been proud to do that for the last 8 years as your mayor.
It was about first-time home buyers, but at least it'll be, well, not for, first-time home buyers in the property transfer tax, but we will move this forward, and Colin has done a little bit of foreshadowing there. But we're going to start with Tom Dias, so 2 minutes up on the board. Mr. Dias, crime is out of control. Break-in enters to job sites, theft of appliances, materials, and tools continue to cripple contractors and trades. How will you fix it?
As we know, Stats Canada released a report recently. Stats Canada has been around since 1920. In that report, they took our particular area and they said that Kelowna is the crime capital of Canada. 1 in 4 residents have reported being a victim of crime, be that a bike stolen or a window broken. You know, simply hiring more CMP officers isn't working. My understanding is last year in Regina, when they put out the recruitment for our CMP officers, they were looking for 1,300 individuals to basically sign up for recruitment, and I believe they received 300. So there is not enough to basically go around. Plus it ends up being, we hear continuously that it ends up being that there is funding and we're hiring our CMP officers, but we truly don't know. I've heard some numbers, but we truly don't know actively how many we've actually brought into this community. We've seen experiences with regards to what's happening on our rail trail, but there is more that the city can actually do. We need to basically stop, saying that it's provincial government or it's federal government's fault. We need to basically take action. We need leadership that allows us to take action. And some of those items that it ends up being, I would look at addressing is, end bicycle chop shops within this community. Empower our bylaw officers. Create RCMP community policing at UBCO. UBCO has been asking that. The students union, I met with them, they've been asking for it, and they've said that they weren't even able to get a meeting with City Hall. Prioritize crime prevention through environmental design, something that this room would be familiar with. Building environmentally friendly, safe buildings. Learn from communities that have tackled crime across North America, not just BC. Go where the crime index has been very bad and find out what they do. And simple things like create a community citizens patrol. Am I out of time, or can I keep going?
We're going to call it at that one. Well, if it's a quick thought, a sentence to bring it home, then sure, but.
It is. I mean, an action, a community safety plan. A simple little thing that it ends up being, if I can address, please. I met yesterday with all of the cab company, with the cab members that are within our community. There is over 300 of them. They had mentioned to me that they haven't been able to have a meeting with City Hall in over years. In a number of years. They said, according to them, they said it was 4 years. Interestingly enough, they said when there's something that happens within the community, the call goes out to the cabbies, so they basically are almost, I'm going to say like an Amber Alert, basically, to partner with individuals like that, to basically allow for a citizens patrol, but to also partner with those individuals to help crime within this community. We can sit back and say that it's the province or we're not doing this or whatever it happens to be, but it's our community. In order for us to kind of get a handle on some of these things, we need to take the initiatives and move it forward. Thank you.
Colin will allow you first response there.
Yeah, thank you. I covered a lot of that in my first go around, but to say that we haven't met with the cab companies is completely false. That's simply not true. Neither is it simply true that Kelowna is the crime capital of Canada. It's not, but we face challenges, so I'm not ignoring that. But I just want to be clear here that we are not the crime capital of Canada. The bike chop shops, we need to stop them. He just said It's not about enforcement, but bike chop shops and stopping those requires enforcement. Again, I will continue to pound the table and say, it is unrealistic to think that we can arrest people with mental health and addiction issues and simply lock them up or lock them up longer, and they are going to be released and suddenly rehabilitated and not fall back into a life of crime. We need to continue to advocate for changes to our justice system, which includes more resources for our Crown prosecutors to deal specifically with repeat offenders. We need to make sure that there is treatment available for people when they're in custody, and we need to make sure that when they are released from custody, there's a transition plan and a place for them to go, so that's not simply a bus ticket back to whatever community they're from and say, hey, good luck. This requires all three levels of government working together. I'm not saying other levels of government are to blame. There are things the City of Kelowna absolutely can do, like continue to advocate, continue to build a journey home plan that calls for housing and supportive housing and complex care and shelter spaces and bringing the people to the table who can actually affect change. But we can't keep doing the same things over and over again, and a heavy-handed policing-only strategy is not going to fix this. It's going to be attacking it from multiple different ways, including making sure that people face consequences for their actions. But again, if they have a mental health or addiction issue, simply locking them up has not and will not work on its own.
Mr. Habib.
Thank you. I'm just going to jump around a little bit, but I want to talk. I'm the president of the Standard, which is the Downtown Nightclub Pub Association. Since 2013, I've been the chair of that organization. From 2013 to 2019, we had a reduction in crime, of incidents of violence outside of nightclubs by over 50%. Chris Williams is here. He's running for council. Not that I'm not cheering him on, because I am, but he was an asset because he was a member of the RCMP task force at the time that worked with me on clearing up that issue. I want to tell you that that just took your hands and feet on the ground, go to work, get it done. When we talk about taking people that have addiction issues and that are thrown in jail and thrown back into the street, mental health issues, the problem is that's what our community is doing now. It was only a week ago that the Downtown Kelowna Association guys called me over and said, Dave, we got this guy, and I started talking to the guy. He'd just gotten out of rehab. The community paid for him to go to rehab for 4 weeks and threw him back out in the street because he didn't have permanent housing. We have to get these individuals permanent housing. You can't put them back out in the street because they're going to go back to their old ways. When I dealt with the home in Rutland on Nickel Road, most of people don't know. I went there with the intention to help these people out because I was sympathetic to their need. They had issues with drug abuse. They had issues with mental health. And there was a lot of stolen items in that home. We took out over 20 stolen bikes when we had them move. But when I saw that the community was cheering and clapping when the house was getting boarded up, I felt sympathetic to the people inside because I knew I didn't want them on the street. I wanted them to find a place to live. So I gave them 10 days. I on purpose told the media it was going to be the following day because I didn't want media there. I didn't want the neighbors clapping and cheering these innocent kids. Look, they have issues. They needed a place to go. We got them to move. I went to that community yesterday and the people on the street were saying, thank you. It's never been so peaceful. But if we work together to take the people that are the issue and put them into permanent housing or give them the opportunity to get permanent housing, we are all winners. The amount of money we're saving by not sending the police there 36 times in 6 months is a fortune. Then they can work on the things that the police aren't supposed to be babysitting anyway. They're supposed to be out there dealing with crime and there's important issues. We can babysit our own communities. We need to set up community organizations where we're all pitching in, doing the parts we can, just like the Standard. It has made a difference in our community. Thank you.
I'd just like to make one comment that at that meeting that I was at yesterday with regards to the cabbies, and they had informed me that at Enzaby and they hadn't had those meetings. Chris Williams was at those meetings also. So he, you know, it is important that it ends up being that we speak sincere and truthful up here, and that is what I had heard from them. And Chris can confirm that it ends up being that that's what they were telling me, and also how they would like to look at reaching out and helping this community as much as possible in this particular area.
So I'm not going to name names, but we have a council candidate who is a part owner in Kelowna Cabs, I'm not going to name him, who can verify that we've actually met. We've talked about services they've wanted at the airport, as an example. So I'm not going to belabor the point, but there have been meetings that have taken place with our cab industry about concerns that they have in our community, and I'll leave it there.
Yeah, we don't want to get into a he said, she said, but I can't get a cab anywhere in town on a Friday night. So if you guys could talk to them about that, that'd be great.
Call Uber.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not touching that one.
Yeah, please don't.
All right, we'll do one last question here, and call Mr. Bazrin. You will get to take the lead on this. There's two pieces to this, but really I want to focus on the first piece. But I want you to define affordable housing. And we're noting that the city is allowing many micro suites to be built. The claim is at $800 a square foot, and that these units are being advertised as affordable. I think it's best to focus on the first half of that question. What does affordable housing mean to you and within this community?
Sure, yeah. Affordable housing for me means that our residents don't have to make a choice between whether they pay utility bills or buy food. It means that they don't have to spend over half of their income to be able to keep the roof over their head and the lights on. So affordable housing for me is, again, creating a community and creating the supply that allows our residents to not have to make those difficult choices. I agree with Mr. Habib. While a lot of the homelessness in our community is, those who are sleeping on our streets, but we know a lot of people who are couch surfing and are just trying to make ends meet day to day. And so that's what affordable housing means to me. And I will continue to try and do what I can as the mayor and as one vote of 9 on City Council to continue to build supply in a timely manner and a diverse cross-section of housing so that it continues to meet the needs of our community, but also recognizing, and I know that we're all hyper-focused on which candidate we want to support, that this is, and again, not deflecting, but this is a national issue. And we need to continue to do the things that we can as a council to control this. And I believe that the City of Kelowna, as is mentioned, is always consulted and in part of conversations with the provincial government when it comes to social and housing policy. And I'm really proud of that. And we'll continue to be a champion for housing affordability in our community moving forward. Thank you.
Mr. Habib.
Yeah, well, affordable housing is that people get to go home, put a roof have a roof over their head, lay down in bed and feel safe and secure. I can tell you from personal experience, as I grew up, I know that most of the way I am today is in my first 15 years of life. It was the way I was brought up, it was the way I was taught, it was what I learned. And I remember clearly what it was like when you were making decisions on paying rent or eating meals or paying your bills. So I recognize that although I've been blessed enough to get to where I am, there are many people I communicate with on a daily basis that are suffering. I know I have many family members that look and say to me, are you going to turn your house into a hotel because it's got less fortunate kids from our community staying with me? Now, I just want to say this, as an individual, as a parent, I apologize. Sorry. When you see the trauma in the mind of a child or a parent when they're trying to feed their kids and what they go through, the suffering that they feel to be able to have a meal, I'm sorry, it's very difficult. I'm sorry that personally gets to me. But there are a lot of kids in this community that all they want is a home and a bed and to be able to get a meal. And we, all of us, can pitch into that possibility to help these people out. It's essential that we step up, step forward, and help them. Because when you've been in my shoes and you've had 3 different individuals in our community commit suicide, the only thing that goes through my mind, one of them I saw hours before, one I saw days before, and she was a local sheriff. And you sit back and you go, how much were they suffering? How much pain were they in? And why did they think that the only way out was death? And so that's why I'm compassionate. That's why I put my heart and soul on the table. That's why I can move the rule when it comes to the ALC, because people need a place to put their head and be able to afford it. And that's our job as a community.
I'm going to jump in there.
Sorry.
Mr. Dias, what does affordable housing mean to you, and how are you getting it built?
Continue to incentivize missing middle housing. Our townhomes, legal suites, even small lot housing. The MLI Select program that I spoke about, to continue to push for RU7 lots. You know, we have seen a lot of development happen in the downtown core. We've seen a lot of towers happen, but we know that a lot of those are rented out. You know, there was a recent little search that I did in the last little bit on Brooklyn, for example, and it had in a few minutes I found there was 10 Airbnbs that were renting out for $250, and speaking to individuals in the building, there's a lot more that are in there. So the city is doing a good job at building the housing, but it's not the affordable housing. It's the developments that are actually happening, and they're not creating those townhomes, those small home lots. Those are the things that needs to be worked towards so that we're creating that housing. When we saw carriage homes, for example, increase, you know, the costs increased by over 800%. And, you know, we were informed that it ended up being, well, you know, we had to, because the province basically told us that it ends up being we had to do that. And yet, on the other hand, we're told that there's very good working relationships with the province through different associations. And a couple of neighborhoods that I went into said that they were looking at building a carriage home on their property, but when they encountered that expense and realized that if they didn't have everything done by September 18th, that there was no grandfathering, even though that they started the process, that expense was going to incur, they basically walked away from it. And this was 3 carriage homes in the Lower Mission that were going to be built. So I believe we need to continue to communicate with our residents and incentivize those types of developments, because those are things that can be built and will not turn into Airbnbs within our community.
Closing remarks. 2 minutes on the clock for each of our candidates. You guys did great. 2 hours on housing. You guys are doing a good job.
Thank you. Yeah, good. Sorry. Once my mind went to a certain spot.
The first closing remarks coming from David Habib.
Thank you. So, I'm back again. I just want to end off and say, you know, one of the most greatest experiences of my life this has been. I want to thank Tom. I want to thank Colin. I want Colin to know that I truly mean this, that I'm sympathetic for for who he is and what he's done for us. I understand that he's worked his heart out and his intentions were good. I'm disappointed that he didn't mentor somebody. This is not supposed to be a career. It's supposed to be something where you step in, make change, move on. I don't see it the way he does. I think 12 years is overdoing it. But I will say, I want Colin to know right now that I've got this. You can move forward, and I will.
You want to get in the middle?
No, you're next. I just want you to know that I'll be calling you from time to time when there's one of your friends at the provincial government that I need you to talk to, and I want you to, and not that I want to sound like Maury Povich, where I say you are not the father, but Tom, this is going to be my job. I'm the guy for this job, and I want, as I've indicated to Tom in the past, we will have 2 desks. His will be next to mine, and we'll work together as a unit to accomplish the things that have gotten away on this city that we need to bring back to the table. I want to just close by saying this. We really need to be mindful of what's happening in our community with our young generation, our students, our future. We're saddling them with debt by the time they leave school, get a career, get a degree. They're leaving school with $60,000, $80,000, $100,000 in debt. That's the first thing they see when they leave in their new career plans. It's sad. We need to make change in a lot of areas. And one thing I really think is desperate is changing the ability so that these kids do not leave with a degree and be saddled with thousands and thousands of dollars of debt.
We'll have to cut you off there, Mr. Habib.
Thank you. Yeah.
Mr. Bazran, 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone for joining us this morning, in particular the CHBA staff and board for putting on this event and for continuing to help raise awareness and advocate for change on an issue that clearly impacts all of us. If I am fortunate to be re-elected as mayor, I want to continue the strong collaboration and engagement we have with you, as well as UDI and other industry stakeholders. Collaboration and partnerships are required by all levels of government, the private sector and social serving sector, if we are going to make positive change and create a community where everyone has a place to call home. As your mayor, Kelowna will continue to lead the way when it comes to seeking progressive and creative plans that will lead to the construction of more housing of all types in our city. Like crime and social issues, there are no quick and easy fixes when it comes to increasing housing availability and affordability. It's going to continue to require political courage and strong leadership in order to build our city differently than we have in the past. Political instability, inconsistent decision-making, increased approval processes will simply drive away investment and slow down the development of much-needed homes at a time when we need them more than ever. We forget that when we talk about development, whether it be a single-family home or a large multifamily condo project, there is significant risk involved. There are many factors that can impact a project that are outside your ability to control. It requires significant capital without ever knowing if you're actually going to make a return. I understand that, and I want to continue to do what I can to minimize that risk by providing the strong and consistent leadership needed to do so. Thank you for investing in our community. As your mayor, I will continue to be an ally so that you will continue to invest in Kelowna, and we work together to make this the best place in Canada to call home. Thank you.
Mr. Dias, closing words.
Well, we've seen some positive actions in the last 8 years. Too many of our priorities are trending in the wrong direction. We have more crime, more homelessness, more traffic, more taxes, and a lot less communication. I've been to thousands of doorsteps, and the message is clear. People are ready for a fresh approach. I have a clear plan for Kelowna. I'll work with you, and I'll admit when I don't know the answers, and I will seek out the experts. Our issues are complex, I know that, but we continue to ignore them, they will become entrenched. We need someone committed to these challenges on a full-time basis. We can't have 1 foot in and 1 foot out of the mayor's position. A good leader knows they don't know everything, and they don't speak down or block those who disagree with them. We won't always agree, and that's okay, but together, I believe that we can truly build a safer, more affordable Kelowna for all of our residents. Thank you.
Well done, sir. Well said. Closing thoughts from yours truly. So thank you to all of our candidates for participating. We'll give an applause in just a moment here. If you want to read about any of the answers of these candidates, we've posted them up on our website, 9 questions just as in-depth as these. So you can access that on our website. We'll be posting it on our social media once again later today. And I'll remind you that the mayor, while important, is only 1 vote. We also have, 32 candidates. Some of them are in this room today, and they're in charge of keeping one of these guys or one of the other 2 candidates accountable. So make sure that you're getting engaged in your civic election. Review the answers that our candidates have sent into the website on the topic of housing and housing affordability, and make sure you're making an informed choice on, what is it, October 15th or sooner. So one more time, I want to give it up for these candidates. It's no small thing to put your name up. Let it stand. Please give them an applause. Thank you, guys. And that's it from me. Thank you guys very much. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a lovely day. Sure.